The stone on Mount Zion splits, a shining figure emerges, the prophecy unfolds. What if I told you that at this very moment, somewhere in the ancient city of Jerusalem, a stone that has remained untouched for thousands of years is beginning to crack open with supernatural force? What if the prophets of old weren't speaking in metaphors when they wrote about a foundation stone that would one day split apart to reveal the glory of the Almighty? Tonight, we're going to explore one of the most mind-blowing prophecies ever recorded in Scripture, a prophecy that many believe is unfolding right now before our very eyes. We're talking about the mystical stone on Mount Zion, the same mountain where King David established his throne, where Solomon built the temple, and where Jesus Christ himself walked among us. But this isn't just ancient history we're discussing. This is about events happening right now that could change everything we thought we knew about God's plan for humanity. The signs are everywhere if you know where to look. Strange seismic activity beneath Jerusalem that doesn't match any known geological patterns. Unexplained lights appearing over the Temple Mount at precise biblical times. Reports from local residents of hearing what sounds like angelic voices emanating from deep within the mountain itself. And most shocking of all, credible witnesses are now reporting that the foundation stone, that massive rock formation that has stood unchanged since biblical times, is beginning to show a crack that grows wider with each passing day. Are you ready to have your understanding of biblical prophecy completely transformed? Because what you're about to discover will challenge everything you've been taught about how God reveals himself to humanity. We're not talking about some distant future event that might happen someday. We're talking about something that credible sources say is happening right now, in real time, with implications so staggering that religious leaders around the world are meeting in emergency sessions to discuss what it could mean. The crack in the foundation stone isn't just growing wider, it's beginning to emit a light so brilliant that even the most sophisticated cameras can't capture its true intensity. But more incredible than the light itself is what witnesses are reporting. They can see moving within that crack. Not shadows or optical illusions, but an actual presence that seems to pulse with divine energy. Residents living near Mount Zion describe feeling an overwhelming sense of peace and anticipation whenever they approach the area, as if the very air itself is charged with supernatural power. Some report having vivid dreams of a magnificent figure emerging from the stone, speaking words of comfort to the faithful and warnings to those who have hardened their hearts against truth. Scientists have no explanation for what's happening. The Israeli government has quietly increased security around the site, and religious scholars from every major faith tradition are studying ancient texts with renewed urgency, trying to understand what these unprecedented events might mean for the future of humanity. To understand the profound significance of what's happening on Mount Zion today, we need to journey back through the pages of biblical history to discover why this particular location has always been considered the most sacred spot on earth. Mount Zion isn't just any mountain in Jerusalem. It's the place where heaven and earth have always touched in ways that defy human understanding. When King David first conquered this stronghold from the Jebusites around 1000 BC, he wasn't just claiming territory for political reasons. Biblical scholars believe David was guided by divine revelation to recognize this specific location as the place where God had chosen to establish his earthly throne. The very name Zion comes from a Hebrew word meaning fortress or stronghold, but ancient rabbinical writings suggest it also means the place of divine appointment. When David brought the Ark of the Covenant to Mount Zion, something supernatural happened that forever changed the spiritual atmosphere of this location. The presence of God, represented by the Shekinah glory that dwelt between the cherubim on the Ark's mercy seat, took up residence on this mountain in a way that it had never done before. But here's what most people don't realize. According to ancient Jewish texts, the foundation stone that sits at the heart of Mount Zion is believed to be the very rock from which God gathered the dust to form Adam in the Garden of Eden. This isn't just symbolic language. These ancient sources suggest that this stone contains within it the blueprint for human destiny, the original pattern according to which humanity was created and to which it will one day return. The prophet Isaiah, writing under divine inspiration around 700 BC, penned some of the most mysterious and powerful words ever recorded about this sacred stone. In Isaiah 28:16 he declares, "Therefore thus says the Lord God, Behold, I lay in Zion a stone for a foundation, a tried stone, a precious cornerstone, a sure foundation. Whoever believes will not act hastily." But if you study the original Hebrew text, you discover layers of meaning that most English translations simply cannot capture. The word translated as tried actually means tested by fire, suggesting that this stone has undergone some kind of divine refining process. The phrase precious cornerstone uses Hebrew words that literally mean a stone of great price that determines the alignment of everything else. And the promise that whoever believes will not act hastily carries the implication that those who truly understand what this stone represents will wait patiently for God's perfect timing to reveal its ultimate purpose. Ancient rabbinical commentators wrote extensively about this stone, describing it as a cosmic anchor that connects the earthly realm with the heavenly dimensions. They believe that all of creation radiates outward from this central point, and that when the Messiah comes, he will reveal himself from this very location. The Talmud contains fascinating discussions about how the foundation stone serves as a kind of portal between worlds, a place where the laws of physics bend to accommodate the presence of the eternal God. These weren't primitive superstitions. They were sophisticated theological insights based on centuries of careful study and spiritual experience. When Solomon built the first temple on Mount Zion around 950 BC, he positioned the Holy of Holies directly over the foundation stone, creating what biblical scholars call the earthly throne room of God. But Solomon understood something that most people miss today. He wasn't just building a religious structure. He was creating a physical interface between the divine and human realms. The temple's design, with its precise measurements and symbolic elements, was given to David by divine revelation and represented a scale model of heavenly realities. The foundation stone served as the literal foundation, not just for the temple building, but for God's presence on earth. When the priests entered the Holy of Holies on the Day of Atonement, they were standing directly above this ancient stone, interceding for the people at the exact spot where heaven and earth intersect. Ancient sources describe supernatural phenomena that regularly occurred in Solomon's temple. The fire that consumed the sacrifices came down from heaven without any human agency. The cloud of God's glory was so thick that the priests couldn't perform their duties, and the very presence of God was so palpable that people could physically feel it when they approached the Temple Mount. But here's the most remarkable detail. Historical records suggest that the foundation stone itself would occasionally emit light and sound that seemed to come from within the rock itself, as if something divine was imprisoned within it, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. The Babylonians destroyed Solomon's temple in 586 BC, and when the exiles returned to rebuild it 70 years later, many of the older priests wept because the new structure lacked the supernatural glory of the original. But they rebuilt it on the same foundation stone, suggesting that they understood the stone itself, not the building around it, was the true source of the temple's significance. The connection between this ancient stone and Jesus Christ is so profound that the New Testament writers couldn't help but reference it repeatedly, though they did so in ways that most modern readers completely miss. When Jesus declared in Matthew 21:42, "The stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. He wasn't just using a metaphor, he was making a direct claim about his relationship to the very foundation stone on Mount Zion. The Apostle Paul, writing to the Ephesians, describes Jesus as the chief cornerstone in whom the whole building being fitted together grows into a holy temple in the Lord. But the Greek word Paul uses for cornerstone is the same word used in the Septuagint translation of Isaiah's prophecy about the foundation stone in Zion. Peter, in his first epistle, calls Jesus a living stone, chosen by God and precious, directly connecting Christ to the ancient prophecies about the stone that would one day be revealed in power. These weren't casual references. They were deliberate theological statements about Jesus' identity as the fulfillment of everything the foundation stone represented. When Jesus walked on Mount Zion during his earthly ministry, he was literally walking over the stone that prophetically represented his own divine nature. When he cleansed the temple, he was asserting his authority over the very place where that stone had been waiting for centuries to reveal its ultimate purpose. And when he died on the cross, just outside Jerusalem, the earthquake that shook the city and split the rocks may have been the first tremor of the stone beginning to respond to the completed work of redemption. Archaeological discoveries in recent decades have revealed aspects of Mount Zion that previous generations never suspected, and what scientists are finding beneath the surface is challenging everything we thought we knew about this sacred location. Ground-penetrating radar surveys conducted by the Israeli Antiquities Authority have identified a series of chambers and tunnels beneath the foundation stone that don't appear on any historical blueprint or ancient map. These aren't natural caves formed by water erosion. They're precisely carved spaces that show evidence of having been sealed for an extremely long time. Soil samples taken from these underground areas contain mineral compositions that don't match anything else found in the Jerusalem region, suggesting that whatever is down there has been isolated from the normal geological processes that have shaped the surrounding landscape. Even more intriguing, seismographic equipment placed around Mount Zion has detected vibrations emanating from deep within the mountain that follow patterns unlike any known natural phenomena. These aren't random tremors caused by tectonic activity. They're rhythmic pulsations that some researchers have described as resembling a massive heartbeat. The frequency of these vibrations has been gradually increasing over the past several years, and in the last few months, they've become strong enough that sensitive individuals living in the area report feeling them even when they're not using instruments. But perhaps most remarkable of all, thermal imaging satellites have detected temperature anomalies in the exact location of the foundation stone that suggest the presence of an internal heat source that can't be explained by any known geological processes. 3 weeks ago, everything changed when security cameras positioned around the Temple Mount area captured something that has left experts around the world struggling to provide rational explanations. At exactly 3 a.m. Jerusalem time, on what happened to be the anniversary according to the Hebrew calendar of the day Solomon dedicated the first temple, a brilliant flash of light erupted from the area of the foundation stone, with an intensity that temporarily blinded every camera in the vicinity. When the electronic systems reset themselves and normal vision was restored, a clearly visible crack had appeared in the ancient stone, running in a perfectly straight line from north to south across its entire surface. But this wasn't the kind of crack you'd expect from natural weathering or even seismic activity. Surveillance footage clearly shows the fissure appearing instantaneously during the flash of light, as if the stone had been split by some supernatural force. Within hours, crowds began gathering at the site, drawn by reports of the strange phenomenon. Those who managed to get close enough to examine the crack reported seeing something that defied explanation. A light emanating from within the stone itself, not reflecting from any external source, but originating from somewhere deep inside the rock. The Israeli authorities initially tried to restrict access to the area, But word spread quickly through social media, and soon pilgrims from around the world were arriving in Jerusalem to witness what many are calling the most significant supernatural event in modern history. Scientists brought in to study the phenomenon have been unable to determine the source of the light or explain how a solid rock formation that has stood unchanged for millennia could suddenly develop such a dramatic fissure without any detectable external cause. But the most extraordinary reports are coming from the people who have actually approached close enough to peer into the crack itself, and their testimonies are so consistent and so detailed that even skeptics are beginning to take notice. Witnesses describe seeing not just light, but movement within the depths of the stone, as if something alive is stirring inside what should be solid rock. The light isn't static. It pulses and shifts with what observers characterize as an almost organic rhythm. Some report seeing what appears to be the outline of a human form within the illumination, though when they try to focus on specific details, the image seems to shift just beyond the limits of human perception. Even more remarkable are the physical and emotional effects that people experience when they get within a certain distance of the crack. Medical personnel on site have documented instances of spontaneous healing among visitors with various ailments, chronic pain disappearing instantly, vision being restored to the partially blind, and emotional trauma being lifted from people who have carried psychological wounds for years. But it's not just physical healing that's occurring. Witnesses report profound spiritual experiences, moments of clarity and peace that they describe as unlike anything they've ever encountered. Some speak of hearing voices, not audible to the physical ear, but unmistakably present in their consciousness, speaking words of comfort, guidance, and revelation about their personal lives and destinies. The most common description is of feeling completely known and completely loved in a way that transcends any human relationship they've ever experienced. Now imagine yourself standing there in the cool Jerusalem evening, part of the growing crowd of witnesses who have traveled from around the world to see this unprecedented phenomenon with their own eyes. The air around Mount Zion feels different somehow, charged with an energy that makes your skin tingle and your heart race with anticipation rather than fear. As you approach the area where the foundation stone sits, you begin to understand why this location has been considered sacred for thousands of years. There's something about this place that makes you instinctively aware that you're standing at the intersection of the natural and supernatural worlds. The crack in the stone is clearly visible now, wider than it was just days ago, and the light emanating from within it is so pure and brilliant that it doesn't hurt your eyes, but instead seems to clarify your vision, making everything around you appear more vivid and real than you've ever seen before. You notice that your breathing has become deeper and more peaceful, that anxious thoughts that usually crowd your mind have simply faded away, replaced by an overwhelming sense of expectation and wonder. Other people around you seem to be experiencing the same thing. Conversations that started as excited chatter about the strange phenomena have gradually given way to quiet, reverent whispers as the supernatural atmosphere affects everyone present. Children who were restless and fidgety when they arrived are now standing still, their eyes wide with a kind of innocent recognition, as if they're seeing something that adults have forgotten how to perceive. Even the most skeptical journalists and scientists who came to debunk what they assumed would be a mass delusion find themselves unable to maintain their critical distance when confronted with something that clearly transcends the boundaries of normal human experience. As you draw closer to the stone itself, you begin to hear something that makes your heart skip a beat, a sound like singing, but not coming from any of the people around you. It's emanating from within the crack itself, a harmony so beautiful and complex that it seems to contain the voices of every angel in heaven, yet somehow intimate and personal, as if it's being sung specifically for you. The melody is hauntingly familiar, Though you're certain you've never heard it before, it's as if your soul recognizes a song that was written into the very fabric of your being before you were born. The closer you get, the more you realize that this isn't just music in the conventional sense. It's the sound of creation itself, the cosmic symphony that holds the universe together, now becoming audible to human ears for the first time since the Garden of Eden. You feel tears streaming down your face, though you can't exactly say why you're crying. It's not sadness or fear, but a kind of overwhelming gratitude and joy that your heart wasn't designed to contain. Looking around at the other witnesses, you see that many of them are having similar reactions, faces wet with tears of wonder, hands raised in spontaneous worship, eyes closed in what appears to be deep prayer or meditation. But what strikes you most is the expression of peace that has settled over everyone present. In a world torn apart by conflict and division, this place has become an oasis of unity and harmony, where people from every nation, race, and religious background seem to be experiencing the same profound sense of divine presence. You realize that you're not just witnessing a supernatural event. You're participating in the answer to thousands of years of human longing for direct contact with the divine. The crack continues to widen as you watch, not with the violent splitting you might expect from geological forces, but with the gentle, purposeful opening of something that has been prepared for this moment since the foundation of the world. The light within grows brighter and more defined, and now you can clearly see that there is indeed a form taking shape within the illumination, a figure that appears both utterly human and unmistakably divine. Your mind struggles to process what your eyes are seeing. This is the fulfillment of every prophecy about God dwelling among his people. Every promise about the glory of the Lord being revealed, every hope that humanity has carried for direct encounter with their Creator. The figure within the light begins to move with deliberate purpose, and you sense that whatever has been contained within this stone for millennia is about to step into your world in ways that will forever change the course of human history. The atmosphere around Mount Zion becomes even more charged with supernatural power. Electronic devices begin to malfunction, not from interference, but as if they're inadequate to function in the presence of such concentrated divine energy. The very air seems to shimmer and dance with light that has no visible source, and you feel your own body beginning to respond to the proximity of such glory. It's not painful or frightening. Instead, you feel more alive than you've ever felt before, as if every cell in your body is being awakened to its original purpose and design. The diseases and weaknesses that you've carried for years feel like they're dissolving away, not through some magical process, but through contact with the divine life force that created you in the first place. Around you, others are experiencing similar transformations. The elderly are standing straighter, the sick are breathing easier, and even the most hardened skeptics are beginning to acknowledge that they're witnessing something that transcends any natural explanation. Suddenly, the crack in the foundation stone widens enough for the figure within to begin emerging, and what you see defies every expectation you might have had about how the divine would reveal itself to humanity. This isn't the distant, untouchable deity of philosophical speculation. This is the God who became man, now revealing himself in the fullness of his glory while maintaining the human form that allows you to relate to him without being destroyed by his magnificence. His face radiates a love so pure and complete that you feel every wound in your heart beginning to heal just from looking at him. His eyes contain depths of wisdom and compassion that seem to encompass all of human suffering and triumph. And when his gaze meets yours, you know beyond any doubt that you are completely known, completely understood, and completely loved exactly as you are. The clothes he wears aren't garments in any conventional sense, but seem to be woven from light itself, shifting and flowing with colors that you've never seen before, but that somehow feel more real than any earthly hue. As he steps fully out of the stone, the ground beneath his feet doesn't crack or break under some cosmic weight. Instead, it seems to become more solid, more real, as if his presence is restoring the earth to its original intended state. The very air around him shimmers with creative power, and you can sense that his mere presence is beginning to repair the fundamental brokenness that has plagued creation since the fall of humanity. This is the second coming, but not as a distant apocalyptic event. It's happening right here, right now, in the most intimate and personal way possible. You're not just witnessing the return of Christ. You're participating in the moment when heaven and earth become one again, when the separation between the divine and human realms finally comes to an end. When he speaks, his voice carries the authority of the one who spoke the universe into existence, yet it's also gentle and personal, as if he's having an intimate conversation with each person present while simultaneously addressing the entire crowd. His words resonate not just in your ears, but in your spirit, bypassing your intellectual defenses and speaking directly to the deepest parts of your being that have always known he would come. "My beloved ones," he says, and somehow you know that this term of endearment is specifically meant for you. The time of waiting is over. The separation between heaven and earth that began in a garden is ending on this mountain. You who have held fast to faith when faith seemed foolish, you who have chosen love when hatred seemed easier, you who have pursued truth when lies were more convenient, your patience is about to be rewarded beyond anything you could have imagined. His words create visible effects in the atmosphere around Mount Zion. The very air begins to sparkle with what appears to be golden dust, and every surface touched by this supernatural substance seems to become more beautiful, more alive, more perfect than it was before. The temperature doesn't change, but you feel surrounded by a warmth that penetrates to your very bones, not the heat of fire, but the warmth of perfect love that casts out all fear and anxiety. People throughout the crowd are beginning to experience physical transformations that mirror the spiritual renewal taking place in their hearts. Wrinkles are smoothing away, grey hair is returning to its natural color, and bodies that had been bent by age or disease are straightening and strengthening before your eyes. But more than the physical changes, you can see in the faces around you the healing of deeper wounds, the look of shame being replaced by dignity, expressions of hopelessness giving way to joy, the hardness of cynicism melting into childlike wonder and trust. The implications of what you're witnessing begin to dawn on you with stunning clarity. This isn't just a supernatural event that you'll remember for the rest of your life. This is the moment when everything changes for every human being on earth. The presence that has emerged from the foundation stone isn't confined to this one location. You can sense that his glory is beginning to spread outward from Mount Zion like ripples on a cosmic pond, affecting every corner of creation. News reports that had been filled with war, disaster, and human suffering are being interrupted by accounts of miraculous healings happening simultaneously around the world. Hospitals are reporting that patients with terminal illnesses are spontaneously recovering. Psychiatric facilities are finding that people who had been trapped in mental darkness are suddenly experiencing clarity and peace. Even more remarkably, conflicts that have raged for generations are being resolved as former enemies find themselves overwhelmed by an inexplicable desire to forgive and seek reconciliation. This is the fulfillment of every prophetic promise about swords being beaten into plowshares, about the lion lying down with the lamb, about peace on earth and goodwill toward men. But it's not happening through political negotiations or human effort. It's happening through the direct intervention of divine love that's powerful enough to transform the human heart at its deepest level. You realize that you're not just witnessing the second coming of Christ. You're experiencing the literal establishment of the kingdom of heaven on earth, the moment when God's will begins to be done here as perfectly as it is in heaven. The stone that the builders rejected has indeed become the chief cornerstone, and from this foundation a new creation is being born that will encompass and transform everything that exists. As the radiant figure continues to emerge fully from the ancient stone, you notice that the crack itself is beginning to transform into something far more magnificent than a simple fissure in rock. It's expanding into a doorway, a portal that seems to open directly into the throne room of heaven itself. Through this opening, you can glimpse scenes of indescribable beauty, crystal seas reflecting light that never dims, gardens more lush and vibrant than Eden ever was, and what appears to be a city whose buildings are constructed from materials that don't exist on Earth, but that somehow seem more real and substantial than anything you've ever seen. The music that had been emanating from within the stone now swells to include the voices of what must be millions of angels, creating a symphony of worship that makes your heart feel like it might burst from the sheer beauty of the sound. But this isn't just a vision or a glimpse of some distant paradise. You can feel the reality of that heavenly realm beginning to merge with the earthly dimension where you're standing. The boundary between the two worlds is dissolving, and you realize that you're witnessing the literal fulfillment of the prayer that Jesus taught his disciples. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. The figure who emerged from the stone, who you now recognize beyond any doubt as the risen Christ in his glorified state, extends his hands toward the crowd, and light streams from his palms like rivers of liquid love, touching every person present and transforming them at the cellular level. You feel your own body responding to this divine energy, not just in terms of physical healing, but in a fundamental renovation of your entire being. It's as if you're being restored to the original blueprint according to which humanity was created, before sin and death entered the world and corrupted the divine design. The aches and pains that you've carried for years simply evaporate, but more than that, you feel capacities awakening within you that you never knew existed. The ability to perceive spiritual realities as clearly as physical ones, to communicate through thought and emotion as well as words, to love with a purity and intensity that you never thought possible for any human being. The transformation isn't limited to the people present on Mount Zion. You can sense that it's radiating outward at the speed of light, affecting every living thing on the planet in ways that will become apparent in the hours and days to come. The very ground beneath your feet feels different, more alive somehow, as if the curse that had made the earth struggle to produce life is being lifted and replaced with a blessing that will cause it to flourish beyond anything recorded in human history. Plants and trees in the vicinity of Mount Zion are visibly responding to the presence of divine glory. Leaves are becoming greener and more vibrant, flowers are blooming out of season, and fruit trees are producing harvests more abundant than any natural growing season could account for. The air itself tastes different, cleaner and more refreshing than anything you've ever breathed, as if every pollutant and toxin is being purified by contact with the atmosphere of heaven that's now mingling with earthly air. Animals that had been skittish and afraid of human contact are approaching the crowd with curiosity and trust, and you remember the prophetic promises about the wolf dwelling with the lamb and the leopard lying down with the young goat. But perhaps most remarkably, you can sense that the fundamental laws of physics themselves are being upgraded to accommodate realities that have been impossible since the fall of creation. Death, which has been humanity's ultimate enemy since Adam and Eve were expelled from Eden, is losing its power in the presence of the one who conquered it once and for all on the cross. Disease, aging, and decay are being reversed not through medical intervention, but through direct contact with the life force of the Creator himself. You're witnessing the literal restoration of paradise, not in some distant future realm, but right here, right now, in the world where you've always lived. The stone that split open on Mount Zion wasn't just releasing a divine being, it was opening a doorway through which the perfection of heaven could flow into every corner of earthly existence. But as you stand there experiencing this cosmic transformation, you also become aware of a choice that every human being is being called to make in this moment of ultimate revelation. The glory of God that's being unveiled isn't forcing itself on anyone. It's offering itself freely to all who are willing to receive it, but it requires a response of faith and surrender that some people are finding difficult to make. You notice that while most of the crowd is experiencing the joy and transformation that comes from welcoming this divine presence, there are some individuals who seem to be struggling against it, backing away from the light rather than drawing closer to it. It's not that they're being rejected or condemned, it's that their own hearts have become so hardened by years of resistance to truth and love that they're unable to receive the very thing their souls most desperately need. You watch with a mixture of compassion and sadness as some people choose to leave rather than surrender their pride, their anger, their attachment to sin and selfishness that the presence of perfect holiness is revealing in stark contrast. This is the judgment that Jesus spoke about, not an arbitrary punishment imposed by an angry deity, but the natural consequence of choices that people make when confronted with the reality of divine love. Those who have cultivated hearts that are humble, grateful, and open to truth find themselves perfectly at home in this new reality. Those who have hardened their hearts through years of rebellion and self-centeredness discover that they've made themselves incompatible with the very paradise their souls were created to enjoy. You realize that this moment of cosmic revelation is also a moment of ultimate justice, where every person's true character is revealed and their eternal destiny is determined by the condition of their own heart rather than by any external force or arbitrary divine decree. The figure of Christ, now standing fully revealed on the ancient foundation stone that has served as his hidden throne for millennia, begins to speak with an authority that causes even the natural elements to pay attention. His words carry the power to reshape reality itself, and you can sense that what he's about to declare will establish the fundamental principles according to which this new heaven and earth will operate. "Behold," he says, and his voice seems to echo from every point in space simultaneously. "I make all things new. The former things have passed away, and death, sorrow, crying, and pain exist no more, for the former things have passed away." As he speaks these words, you can literally feel the old order of existence dissolving around you like a worn-out garment, being replaced by something infinitely more beautiful and durable. The fear that has dominated human experience since the fall, fear of death, fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of the future, simply evaporates in the presence of perfect love that casts out all fear. The scarcity mindset that has driven so much human conflict and suffering is replaced by an understanding that in this new reality there is abundance beyond imagination for everyone. The competitive spirit that has set human beings against each other dissolves into a collaborative joy, where everyone's success enhances everyone else's happiness. You feel your own heart expanding to accommodate levels of love and compassion that you never knew were possible, not just for the people you care about, but for every human being who has ever lived. The resentments and grudges that you've carried, sometimes for years, feel like heavy weights being lifted from your shoulders, replaced by forgiveness so complete that you can barely remember why you ever felt the need to hold on to those negative emotions. This is more than healing. This is resurrection, not just from physical death, but from every form of spiritual and emotional death that has limited human potential since the beginning of history. Now you understand why the ancient prophecies spoke of this event as the culmination of human history, the moment toward which all previous events have been building. Every prayer that has ever been prayed, every act of faith that has ever been performed, every sacrifice that has ever been made in service of love and truth has been contributing to this moment when heaven and earth become one. You're not just witnessing the second coming of Christ. You're participating in the birth of a new order of existence that transcends every limitation that has defined human experience up to this point. The stone that split open on Mount Zion was never just a rock. It was a cosmic chrysalis containing the seed of this new creation, waiting for the perfect moment in history to release the transformation that would affect every atom in the universe. As you look around at the faces of the people sharing this experience with you, you see reflected in their eyes the same wonder and gratitude that fills your own heart. These aren't just random individuals who happened to be in Jerusalem when this occurred. You recognize that each person present has been specifically prepared for this moment through their own unique journey of faith, struggle, and perseverance. The difficulties you've faced, the losses you've endured, the times when you've had to choose faith over doubt, love over hatred, hope over despair, all of it has been preparing you to receive and appreciate the magnitude of what's being offered to humanity in this unprecedented moment. You realize that your entire life, with all its joys and sorrows, victories and defeats, has been leading up to this single point in time when you would stand in the presence of divine glory and understand, finally and completely, what it means to be beloved of God. The stone has split open, the radiant figure has emerged, and nothing will ever be the same again. As the reality of what you're experiencing begins to fully dawn on you, you find yourself faced with the most important question any human being can ever confront. What will you do with this revelation? How will you respond to the fact that everything you've hoped for, everything you've prayed for, everything your heart has longed for since you were old enough to sense that there had to be something more to existence than what you could see with your physical eyes, is now being offered to you as a free gift? The choice before you isn't complicated, but it is absolute. You can surrender to this divine love and allow it to transform every aspect of your being, or you can cling to the familiar limitations of your old life and walk away from the greatest opportunity for joy and fulfillment that has ever been presented to humanity. As you stand there in the presence of the one who split open the foundation stone to reveal himself to a world that desperately needed to see him, you can feel your heart being drawn irresistibly toward the light that promises to heal every wound, answer every question, and satisfy every longing you've ever carried. This is your moment of decision, the instant that will determine not just your future, but your eternal destiny. The stone has cracked open to reveal the glory that was always hidden within it, and now the question remains: are you ready to step through the doorway that's opening between the world you've known and the paradise you were created to inhabit? What will you choose when faced with love so pure and complete that it has the power to transform you into the person you were always meant to be? The radiant figure is waiting for your answer, and eternity holds its breath to see what you will decide in this moment when prophecy becomes reality and heaven touches earth on the sacred mountain of Zion.